Hello and welcome to Telling the Show, a different kind of podcast made for aspiring screenwriters by aspiring screenwriters. And yeah, that's a screenwriter trying to talk. Wow. Welcome. I'm Chris Moore, and as always, I have with me.
Hi, I'm Denise Seiler.
And our guest today on this episode, Denise, introduce
I'll take it.
Yes,
I'll
please.
take it. I'm so excited. We have this week Chap Taylor. He's written more than 36 screenplays and television pilots for all the major Hollywood studios. He was co-writer for one of my favorite films, which was the Paramount feature Changing Lanes with Ben Affleck and Samuel L. Jackson. He's also a really good guy because he wants all of us to be better screenwriters and help us get there. So we have so much more to talk about, but we'll get there. We'll get there soon.
Thanks, guys. I'm glad to be here, and thank you for asking me.
Thank you for joining us. I mean, absolutely. You're probably all the people that we've worked with are working professionally, but as to somebody actually in the industry, you're probably our first guest that's actually in it, like day to day in the trenches, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Well, then you should probably wrap up the podcast after I'm done. Then
we should.
I should really, before you get anybody bigger and better than me, you should really don't hurt my feelings.
Never.
Let's just close it out like this.
Won't be a problem because I'm
kidding. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. And but seriously though, don't get anybody bigger because I'm very insecure.
Well, hey, just consider that your Oscar speech. There you go.
Thank you.
That's right. Remember when?
Yes. I'll show you all. You'll be sorry. Oh wait, wrong speech. Sorry.
Wow.
I know.
It's that kind
really
of party
close
now.
To mine. I've
That's
practiced mine in the mirror. I know.
Everyone
Here's to everyone who said that I couldn't put one sentence together. So
everyone in the world has practiced their Oscar speech in the shower, and until when I was younger, practiced there. Probably, you fantasized about being the heavyweight champion of the world, president of the United States, or winning an Oscar. I think we're pretty clear that people mostly just stick to the Oscar now.
That's right. Yeah.
I don't know that anybody wants to be any of the first two, but yes,
nope.
Everybody, and to my high school sweetheart,
Yeah, that's where I'd be too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it wouldn't be the first time that someone goes on stage on live television and goes, "Suck it."
No,
I'd love to.
Yeah,
it would not be. Maybe the most recent event, but not the
Not by far the last.
Nope.
We have a lot to talk about, so I want to go right into our Logline Thunderdome so I can keep up my winning record. Chris, while I play the intro, do you want to? Yes. I'm terribly taunting.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell them what Logline Thunderdome is all about?
Absolutely. Roll that beautiful footage. I say that beautifully because I created this. Logline Thunderdome. Two log lines enter, only one comes out.
That was kind of cool.
Thanks. Just give me Final Cut Pro and enough plugins and some time on my hands, which lately I don't seem to have a lot of. And that's what results.
The only thing you're missing is that steel sound like ka-clang. You want to have that?
Or add the old THX waveform thing where it's like at the end, thud, you're deaf.
Yep. That either will be acceptable.
All right. I got to work on that and get you a clang for the next episode. And I hope you'll tune into the next one.
Just slack it. So my entry into this week's Logline Thunderdome.
Here we go.
Last week we talked about how I should say it was a musical. So this week I picked a musical one. So my logline is: this episodic musical exposes a small Harlem nightclub to the struggle to survive the dawn of television and remain constant during the civil rights movement, while the entertainers try to escape their pasts and survive their futures.
Okay.
Side note, it does feature all Barry Manilow music.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
Really? Like the last part is a real thing?
No. Yes. I mean, this story actually is Barry Manilow music, but it's not in part of the logline.
Okay.
Well, right. Okay.
Is Barry Manilow popular in Harlem? Was he popular in Harlem?
He's from Brooklyn.
Close enough.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
I mean, we rewrote a lot of music, so yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So when we evaluated log lines, we're thinking of conflict, character, and concept. Concept is all over this thing, clearly.
Yes. Right?
Right. And is it an ensemble piece?
It is an ensemble piece, yes.
Okay, because
Are you allowed to read it? Can I hear that again? Are you allowed to read it more than once?
Absolutely.
Okay.
This episodic musical exposes a small Harlem nightclub to the struggle to survive the dawn of television and remain constant during the civil rights movement, while the entertainers try to escape their pasts and survive their futures.
Okay. It's a feature or a television series?
It is a television series.
Okay, got it.
So I'm listening. I'm curious, and it does make me want to know more. But the problem I'm finding with it is that I don't have a character to hone in on to see how it would involve me a little bit. And there's a conflict there. I'd want to know what the survival piece is, really. I think that could actually, if it could be accentuated a little more, I think we could get more of what the conflict might be.
Okay.
So that's what I'm thinking. What do you think, Chap?
I think it sounds very interesting. I would suggest that you build the log line around. It's an ensemble piece, but I would refer to that. I would say a group of aspiring, whoever they are, group of aspiring musicians, group of aging entertainers. A multicultural cast of whoever struggle to navigate the dawn of television, the civil rights movement, against the backdrop of a once legendary Harlem musical club, something like that. Because when
that's so much better than what I wrote.
I will let you use it for money, but anytime you use a log line, obviously the log lines are hugely challenging because you have to compress. They're challenging and they're very useful because obviously any story worth telling, particularly television series, there's all kinds of storylines, all kind of characters, all kind of challenges that you're asked to put into a few sentences. Why they're useful is they force you to really hone in on what the story is. So my suggestion is when somebody reads that or when you tell that to somebody, the first thing they're going to want to know is who am I following in the story and what happens to them.
I got you.
And you have all those details. Like I can see, other than the Barry Manilow part, I can see all of those things. I just will want, I think if you pitch this, and I don't know how big your ensemble is, if it's an aspiring young singer or an aging band leader tries to whoever that guy is or that girl is or that group of people, I would leave it. And you have all the other parts already.
That's kind of what I was thinking. It's very highly visual, but it needed it. Even if it's an ensemble, it's got to anchor around somebody because Glee's the same way. If you think about it, and it's got. I mean, even if you could get specific to a number of people, like 5 students, and specify them some way. That's the only thing I was thinking is just it. It just needed to be slightly more specific about.
Well, Glee's a good example because if you pitch the log line for Glee, you would say. A group of misfit high school students outside the popular group sings and dances as they resolve their, high school trauma and try to get a date to the prom or whatever it is. Like you would lead with, they were the losers, right? And then they became cool because they were performers.
Right.
You would lead with them. So same.
Totally makes sense. Okay. Well, that was my submission.
There we go.
Very, very good one.
Yeah. Next victim. Here we go. Now this is intended to be this is intended to be a short film. So this one's much more contained. And the log line is this. A student filmmaker is hired by a manic would-be actor to shoot a screen test, but must direct the actor through his nervous breakdown to save himself when he holds him at gunpoint.
That's awesome.
Okay. Christopher Walken is the first thing that sprung into my mind. And he could play either. Okay.
Exactly.
Would you say that again, please?
Sure. A student filmmaker is hired by a manic would-be actor to shoot a screen test, but must direct the actor through his nervous breakdown in order to save himself when he holds him at gunpoint.
Yeah. The only thing I would say, it's a short film. All right, so I know who the two characters are. I know what's going to happen to them. The only suggestion I would make is, if there isn't a way to slightly condense that,
Like bring the words further down, excise a few.
so yeah, something like, hired to direct a screen test by a failed aging actor, a student filmmaker must direct the scene of his life when the actor suffers a nervous breakdown and holds him at gunpoint.
Right.
Like that.
So it definitely needed to be massaged, but thank you. That's a good suggestion. Now, I can't afford you, but
No.
Do you take Google Pay?
Wow. I can sell you. It might be my son's college account, but
I don't care. Just no crypto. I don't believe in it. Just
I don't either. But Denise, what are your thoughts?
I'm kidding. You can send me crypto. That's fine.
That's the next Wolf of Wall Street.
Yep. Yes.
That was where I was headed too. The last part of your log line was a little confusing to me, of like who's holding the gun and who's on the other end. So, but yeah.
That's a great idea for a short film.
Yeah.
That's a story that not easily, but that's a story obviously that you can tell the beginning, middle, and end with built-in tension and drama and resolution in whatever it is, 10 or 15 minutes.
Exactly.
That's a good idea for a short film.
Thank you.
I hate to say it, but I think yours is going to win this week. Just throwing it out there. I like yours
better. The criteria is what? The criteria is not who has the best idea. The criteria is who has the best log line, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's a tie.
Oh, you can't do ties. Well, I mean, 2, 1, and 1. That would be okay.
I mean, are you allowed? Do you want me to pick one, or we want to vote?
Yeah. No, I want you to pick one, as long as it's mine.
I think it's. I'm totally being serious. I think it's a tie. I think they both have strengths and they need to be massaged a little bit. And I think that you have all of the fundamental elements on both types of story. You know what? I'll jump back and just say, the first one, I think you should specifically say that it's a television series.
Right.
A dramatic television series focused on ... Right. Because when you say an episodic musical, I wasn't quite sure whether it was a movie with an episodic structure.
Oh, okay.
Right? Which is a thing that I wouldn't suggest, but they exist.
Right.
I think they're both pretty good, to be honest with you. They just need to be shaped up a little.
All right, we'll call it a tie.
Sorry.
No, I can live with that. 3 and 2. That ain't bad. Sort of. Would that be 3 and 2?
No. Yeah.
No. You said you were
2
down 2 to 1. It's 2, 1, and 1.
2 and 1, 1.
See,
are you not a hockey fan?
No, not really. Well, no, I am a hockey fan, but not in stats. I couldn't tell you stats. I just like to see blood on ice.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's what I meant.
Boys.
Yeah, what are you going to do? Well, okay. I'm glad I survived that one. Thank you, Chap, for thank you very, very much. Now, Denise, was that one was yours? Was that one of yours?
Yes.
Okay.
That is Copa, of which there's a snippet available on my website. So if you want to read it.
Nice.
Okay.
Nice.
I hate to be that guy, but you know that the Copacabana was not in Harlem, right?
Yes, I do. Yeah. It's called Copa.
And Barry Manilow had the Copa song, so that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, it's weird because it's like sort of based in reality and sort of not.
So it's kind of approximating history, kind of like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, a little bit.
So like in the Bible, season 2 is all Britney Spears music, and it takes place in the 80s. So
wow, that's time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then, all kidding aside, if you pitch that to people as taking place in a Harlem nightclub, they will bump on Barry Manilow. They will think you're kidding.
Well, I mean, it makes for a conversation. So,
100%.
yeah, I mean, yeah.
Well, isn't that the old adage in Hollywood? Does it have to be a light bulb? So, does it have to be Barry Manilow?
It does, because he's got a Broadway show coming out. And so
this isn't in no way a slight on Mr. Manilow's talent. He's a giant star. And many people
he's an amazing
music.
Songwriter.
They just will be confused because they will assume it's something like the Cotton Club or the Apollo, where it's primarily African American performers.
Right.
And Barry Manilow is kind of the definition of white bread entertainment.
Right.
So they'll find that confusing, is my opinion.
Okay.
just as an
But if you just
offset-
call it the Copa, I mean, if you just move him to Midtown, and I'm not
Right.
I'm not rewriting your show for you. I'm just I hear this stuff all day long. If
Right.
The other thing about here's the other last thing I'll say about log lines: don't give them anything to bump on, and bump is the term of the current term for I didn't quite get that, or I don't quite like that, or I don't want you to do that, or no, or I don't know, and then all kind of gets summed up. I bumped on X, and
Oh wow. Okay.
and especially given this, all kidding aside, the sensitivities that every buyer in the business now has for diversity and for
Mm-hmm.
properly portraying people's cultures,
Mm-hmm.
they're gonna. Someone will say that's unusual.
Okay.
I was just going to make a suggestion, Denise, that if you really want to hone in on something, because here's the thing, Barry Manilow actually did turn Copacabana into a musical, but first it was a TV movie back in
Yes.
the 80s, co-starring
Yeah.
Annette O'Toole. Yeah, I'm just full of trivia.
Nice. Deep
Wouldn't
cut.
it be, thank you. I'm good with
Well
the
done.
obscure.
No?
But wouldn't it be great to see if it were, I mean, and you take this with the absolute grain of salt, it is probably less than. What if it were Lionel Richie? Because he's never gotten his due, and as far as I know, he could handle writing a musical, and it would be great
Maybe
to
it's season
blend well
3.
with that. You know,
My sense is you really like the Barry Manilow, so you should keep the Barry Manilow.
Yeah.
You should just
Yeah.
not make it in Harlem.
No, I can totally move it. That does make sense.
Yeah, and then people totally because they'll all go, I know that song, the Copa, Tony and Lola.
Right.
She,
Yes.
He got shot. It's terrible.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
so all
And
right.
goddamn Rico with his diamond pinky ring. No goddamn good.
Yeah. Right. And he led to West Side Story. But anyways,
Mhm.
that's a whole different story.
There you go. Well, chap, thank you for the good information on the terminology bump,
Yes.
Yeah.
new industry lingo, and for joining us on the logline journey here. And everything you were
Thank you.
saying about log lines being useful made a lot of sense to me, because I like to use them to
Absolutely.
evaluate. I like to use them to evaluate whether or not I want to proceed or invest my time in a story. Like, can I leverage this to move forward with something?
Every
So-
writer hates log lines for good reason, because they suck and they make you do stuff you don't want to do.
Yeah.
But if you can't, that was the old joke when I came in, tell me your movie in 15 words or less, some dumb shit like that. Never mind.
Yeah. Yes, you can.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
But the reality is that if you can't, in 3 sentences, a farm boy from a planet on the outside of the solar system takes on the galactic empire and saves the girl. If you can't do that, then you need to think more about your story, right?
Yeah.
A cop
That's-
visits
I
his estranged wife in a
Mhm.
skyscraper in Los Angeles on Christmas Eve and must save her from terrorists while repairing his marriage. If you can't do that, then you should probably think about it.
I have problems with that.
Everybody
Getting it
does.
all down.
Everybody hates them. Every
Yeah.
writer hates them just for that reason. You want to talk about all the good details and all the stuff
Right.
you sweated so hard to come up with. But the beauty of it is, what's the story? What is the story in 3 sentences or less? And the story is, he's a cop. He's in Los Angeles. There's terrorists in the building, and it's really about, does he get his wife back? Can he accept her
Right.
success? Right.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
the movie. And then all the other cool stuff, the glass and the Yasser Arafat's suits and the
Right.
and the the limo driver with the stuffed teddy bear. That's all awesome, but that's not the story. The story is, does John McClane reunite with his wife and save her from terrorists?
Yeah, absolutely.
And when you boil it down like that, that's my total basis for my argument of why Die Hard is actually a Christmas movie.
100%.
So
Anyone
it is-
says
it totally
otherwise is a liar and hates Christmas.
right.
Fun trivia fact, though, Frank Sinatra was originally supposed to play that role.
I was gonna say the original novel was sourced from The Detective,
Mhm.
and Fox actually made it into a movie, but
He-
obviously a completely different plot.
Yeah, it was one of the later movies he made in the early 70s, and he was the detective, and he had the raincoat and the hat, and then I think it was a subsequent novel, same character,
Hmm.
became obviously would have been a very different movie with old blue eyes.
Right, right. But Nothing
Definitely
Lasts
would have.
Forever is actually the basis of it all. So
Oh, the same novel?
I don't know if it was the same novel, but I think it was supposed to be it was a line of books, and that was the next one. So
Yeah, it was the sequel to The Detective, right?
yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So And
So
it's
do you like? This is a weird question. We're gonna mildly jump into questions, but you have a lot of adaptation interests. Is that something that you just like tend to gravitate towards?
I tend to gravitate towards them giving me money to do things when that happens, which is
I
not
laugh, but
as
it's
often
true.
as I'd like. Yeah.
I mean,
No, I've been fortunate to do like a lot of different things. And now the current trend is that almost everything is based on pre-existing IP, so it's much more common.
Right.
But it's not a conscious artistic choice. It's just those were the jobs that I got.
All right.
Well, you must be good at it because people keep on giving you stuff to adaptation, make an adaptation of adapt. Thank you.
We just had that. Another writer and I were like, but I say adaptation, but it's not I write adaptation, but it's adaptation, like that Nick Cage movie about that other screenwriter. But I want it to be adaptation, and it's not. Doesn't matter what I want. It's not. It's adaptation.
Because that's the true word. I mean, but for years, adaptation was because everybody went to adapt it, and you would see it on novelizations all the time. This is the adapted novelization or something like that.
We should go back to it.
Well, all right.
Let's do it. I'm ready.
Or we should make a sequel to adaptation called Adaption.
See, I could just see that now. That'd be a short film, and it would largely be parody. And
it would just be one Nick Cage, not two.
You know, okay, I'm sorry. I have to bust out a Nick Cage impression for you. How in the name of Zeus's butthole did you come up with that idea? Sorry, I had to.
Yeah, man. I'm not sorry that you did.
Well, I appreciate it, but in the interest of moving along and not wasting your precious time, Chap, we're going to talk about those things that you've done. For instance, Chap has done uncredited work on National Treasure, Behind Enemy Lines, the Omen remake, all Fox Pictures, served as consulting producer on season 4 of the NBC drama, The Blacklist, and wrote the episodes for that show, episodes 407, 414. So those, obviously, season 4, right?
Yes.
Okay. You're currently developing television pitches with Tom Fontana, Barry Levinson, Doug Lyman, and Jay Carson, the creator of The Morning Show.
Yes.
And in features, and this is interesting because I really love this classic movie. You reimagined the classic John Ford Western, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, for producer Matt Jackson over at Paramount. I got to ask you about that later.
It's a musical, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. Then, yeah, we got to talk.
Denise and I did it together. It's a Barry Manilow musical.
Let's do it. A Western.
He fights crime. He fights crime and he sings.
Love it.
In New York. In the
That's
West.
my Blade Runner remake. Is a musical.
Yeah.
Okay, I can't wait to see this on Paramount Plus. I'm just saying the Blade Runner thing obviously will be a Crunchyroll kind of a thing. Okay, now Denise was telling me before we went live today.
Went hot.
Yeah, went hot. Yeah, we're coming in hot.
Seems cool. It sounded cooler. I don't know if that's really a podcast thing, but
it might as well. It might as well be adapted, whatever. And we're bringing it back there. So, but Denise and I were talking before you came on, and she was telling me that you say you broke into the business as a veteran. Can you tell us more about what that might mean?
I am a veteran, peacetime veteran, and I got into college on the GI Bill. I went to a little state school in Washington State, and then was able to transfer to NYU, where I went to film school at NYU. So I probably would not have been able to do any of those things if I was not a veteran. And then, having attended NYU and got a very expensive film school education, a very fancy film school, I spent the next 2 years working as a production assistant because that's what happens when you go to film school. And worked as a production assistant as a set PA on the streets of New York, and this is the early 90s. So it was a very different city, and did a couple of Woody Allen pictures. I did Die Hard 3. I did the New York portions of Eraser and Daylight. I remember the Sylvester Stallone picture where there's a collapse in a tunnel, and he happens to be a mountain climber who's in the tunnel.
Yes.
Yeah. So we did that, and that's how I was really first. That's really kind of how I learned about filmmaking, was as a PA, and met a producer on set of what I like to call the smash hit remake of the Billy Wilder classic Sabrina, and we developed a relationship, and he eventually hired me to write a screenplay, which became Changing Lane.
Nice.
I was in New York during that time. That was shortly after. Is that something that NYU helped set up for you, with making those contacts? It
Not
was
at
all
all.
you.
Not even a little bit.
Wow.
I should say, in fairness, since I'm going to be teaching at NYU in the fall, it's a very fine institution. Everyone should go and give. One of the strengths, in my opinion, one of the strengths of film school is primarily the relationships you make with other people who want to be filmmakers, and the access that it gives you, frankly, to be cheap, free labor to important people. So the entertainment business is exclusively a business of relationships, and the question that everyone asks themselves, and I'm sure your audience is asking themselves, is like, how do I develop those relationships? How do I get access to those people? Because access is the coin of the realm. And one of the advantages, in my opinion, one of the only advantages of going to a fancy film school is that in New York, you could be an intern for Scott Rudin, you could be an intern for David Brown, you could be an intern for one of the studio offices that scouted books, and you would be making, I don't know if people even make copies, you'd be making copies and bringing people coffee, but you would be in the office and you would be around people and you would get to read screenplays. And I interned for Nancy Tenenbaum, who was the woman who produced Sex, Lies, and Videotape for Steven Soderbergh. So, and I walked her dog and I did a lot of stuff, but she would let me read screenplays, and they would come in from the big four agencies, from CAA and at the time William Morris and ICM and UTA, and most of them sucked. And it gave me confidence that if these guys could do it, I could do it. And so, no, NYU had nothing to do with me breaking into the business, but it does play any school like that. And there are now many. When I went to film school, there were less of them. Now there are many great film schools all over the country. I'm trying to do something with David Gordon Green. He went in North Carolina, right?
Yeah.
They're all over the place, and they do, and access and relation. I'm still friends with the guys that I went to school with. That's the strengths, which maybe is a tangent, so I should stop now. But
but that's important. I mean, Denise and I know full well, coming out of the program we were in, that the whole reason we work together is because we were networking with our colleagues. So hence why this podcast exists.
Yep.
And in my case, I had no film background. I didn't, I had to learn the language. I hate to say this, but the language of cinema. So it probably served a number of, it did me well for a number of reasons. If you, especially today, given the access to technology and the ability to self-distribute, people should really debate whether they want to spend $100,000 or $200,000 to go to film school, unless they feel like those relationships and that access will be worth it, or that they need to learn those things, as I did. I loved old movies, but I didn't know the language of film. I didn't know what coverage was. I literally didn't know any of those things. And I learned them at film school. So that was a positive. If you have six figures and you're confident in your ability to tell a story, you're really better off going out and making something, is my opinion.
That's something we, Chris and I discuss all the time, is that I'm done waiting for someone to give me a green light. I'm just going to start making it myself.
Yeah.
And it's a whole new adventure because I don't know anything. So I'm starting from scratch.
The idea that, Francis Coppola at one point said that, the next Godfather will be made by a farm girl in Indiana with a Super 8. No, it won't.
No.
Francis Coppola can't make another Godfather. I mean, those things are extraordinarily rare, brilliant pieces of art. And everyone cannot make film, and everyone is not equally talented, and there's a finite number of people who are able to do it. Having said that, I just posted on Twitter today, everybody. I'm on Twitter now. And what I suggest is, because I've been thinking with a lot of thought to how do people because I kind of went on there to because my reps told me I need to build a social media brand, which is an entire different conversation. But I'm trying to find a niche of like helping people, like giving advice to people, trying to pass on I'm not the king of Hollywood, but I can tell you what I experienced and what worked for me. And what I said today was, if I was starting out today and I wanted to be just a writer, just a screenwriter, and to write or maybe produce the things that I wrote, I would self-publish novels. I would write novels and I would go on Amazon or whatever. Right. And I would build a social media. I would tell whatever story I wanted to tell, right? Make it the best that it could be. And then I would build a social media network and just market the hell out of it. And that applies to podcasts or to, if you're able to do, the kind of short films that will really grab people's attention in terms of special effects or in terms of a story with such a great hook that they might be expandable, maybe short films. Certainly you could build a reel as a director, but in terms of because everything's based on pre-existing IP now. So were I just like knocking on the door today with no idea what to do, I would create my own IP and I would publish it myself, whether that's on YouTube or on Amazon or whatever. And then I would just get on the internet, get on Twitter, get on Instagram, get on Facebook, and build a network of friends and juice the algorithm to get a lot of people to see it. Because that's, The Martian was a self-published novel.
Right.
What's the one that's just coming out now? Oh, Infinite, right?
Yeah.
Paramount Plus. The guy self-published it, and it doesn't work for everybody, but the author of the novel that became the movie Infinite with Mark Wahlberg wrote it specifically to get it adapted into a movie. And I think the first page of the book was, I'll give you 10% of my money if you help me make this into a movie. I think it was in the book.
Wow.
And they did. So there you go.
Well, and it's an interesting phenomenon about that. And it's well, first of all, a writer's got to write. And so I say write any way you can. It doesn't matter if it's song lyrics, just if you're writing every day, writing log lines, writing lyrics, you're still practicing. You're writing. You're a writer.
Yes.
And but it's funny. Quentin Tarantino he originally started Once Upon a Time in Hollywood as a novel, then decided to make it as a film, and now he actually wrote a novelization, and it just recently, I just got my copy from Amazon because I'm very curious about that film in many ways. But it's interesting he's going back to that, and apparently in interviews he's saying after his 10th film, when he's supposed to retire, or at least has said that he's going to retire, he is going to write books, or at least he alluded to that. And I think that's fascinating. For one thing, he said it's easier to do because once you write a script, then you got to figure out how to get it made, get it sold, that sort of thing. When you write the book, just like you said, all you got to do is get, people self-publish now. So,
yeah, I mean, a screenplay obviously is not a finished product. A screenplay is a very strange hybrid document because it's a blueprint. It's literally a blueprint that hundreds of people have to execute to make a movie or a television episode. But simultaneously, it has to be a narrative ride that gives the reader the same emotional, catharsis and experience as the movie hopefully will. And it also has to be a sales document. You have to read a screenplay and say, that was great, and I must make this movie. And then hundreds of other people have to execute it. It's not a finished item the way a novel is, or a poem is, or short story. Like, those are done. That's a thing. So, or a podcast, like it's when you wrap this up and put it on Facebook or whatever it is, that's what it is. And then maybe it becomes something later. So, yeah, I mean, I'm repeating myself, but were I to start today, I would not wait. I would not, as you put it, wait for people. It's really challenging to become a professional screenwriter. And it's even more challenging once you become a professional screenwriter. It's more challenging to stay a professional screenwriter. And it's just very challenging. So,
do you think that's why because of those experiences, do you think that's why you decided you went into the comic book world and created, I'm looking for it, Haunted City? Yes, which has some of the coolest art I've seen in a very long time.
Thank you. I didn't have anything to do with the art other than I told you.
No, but I know, but it's still they
did a great job. Yes, I absolutely. I created Haunted City to have an underlying IP because that's where everything was going, and because I wanted to have more control over the project. And we'll see if that works out. I sold it once to Legendary as a TV pilot, and they paid me to write a pilot, and it didn't get made, and the rights have reverted to me, and so we're going to take it out again, re-envision, reimagine for today, and that's something I'm doing with Tom Fontana and Barry Levinson. So we'll see.
I would watch it. I read the brief description, and I was like, I ordered number 1 because I want to see.
Nice.
I'm not really like a comic book person, but I was interested. I was like, this is a really cool story. So, and it's something that you haven't seen before. So I was kind of interested in that. Yeah.
We'll see, but it's certainly everyone has to. This is my opinion. Everyone has to do everything now, or you have to find. It's just there's very few. When I came into the business, obviously it was hard to break into the business, and it was still very challenging, and it was very competitive. But you could make a living writing screenplays for motion picture studios for feature films. It doesn't really exist anymore. I mean, the number of men and women who do that full time, only writing feature screenplays for major studios, is under 100. So, by way of comparison, there are 800 people who play professional basketball. There's 5 studios, and there's 3 or 4 big streamers, and they make, they each have 10 writers because that's all they need. So, and then there are a few hundred more who, pick up jobs here and there and put together a career by doing a bunch of different things. So unless you're one of those 100 people, you have to do a lot of different things. You have to write, go after open writing assignments. You have to write spec features. You have to do television. You have to comic books. And the good news is that those silos are much more permeable than they used to be. Like when I came into the business, you were a feature writer, and nobody wanted to do TV, even though that's where all the money was, because I write movies. And then there's the TV guys, and the comic book guys were way off in the corner in their mom's basement. And now they run everything, and and it's people do comic books, they do movies, they do television, they do webisodes. You have to just tell stories however the opportunity presents itself.
And then with that property, so you're doing it as a TV series, and then you're doing it again as a feature. What is the process? How is that process different? Like
that was the original idea was, we were going to do it with McG, and we're going to do it through his company. We're going to do it as a kind of universe, which is something that people have tried to do with mixed success. A number of different times. I mean, Star Trek's probably the biggest example of an IP that is feature film. Started as a TV series, got canceled, came back as a series of movies, were successful. Then they made more TV series. Then they made more movies. Now they have cartoon television series like that, and comic books and Halloween costumes and everything else. Right now, we're just going to do it as a TV series and see if anyone wants to do that. And then the idea is scalable because it's the mythology of all the immigrant groups that pass through the big cities of the world. Yeah, you could expand it out as much as people had an appetite for. But at the moment, we're just going to try and hope that someone will make a TV series.
I would watch it.
See,
could you write that down and give me that in writing? Because I'll bring it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Even if McG wasn't attached, I would still watch it because I think the story is really cool.
I mean, just looking at the artwork, I mean, I've got a friend who published his own comic books for a short time. He's in a different kind of headspace now, still using his art skills, but it's anything's a rough go. Even the comic industry, every industry right now, entertainment wise, music, comic books, film, everything is getting narrowed. There's a lot of constriction right now. Independent film, it's surprising you see pockets of it, but all of it's like more regional now, especially on the independent film side, I think.
Yeah, and I don't know what the status of independent film is. It doesn't really exist the way it did.
No.
Not that I would sanction this kind of activity, but just sneak into one of the like H Hall at Comic-Con and just do like a little like the next big thing is coming and just
Whisper
blast it on the
campaign.
screen. Yes. I'm telling you, those are the people. Hall H is where you're going to find your audience.
Okay.
Oh, no kidding. No.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
So,
I will tell them Denise sent me.
Yes.
yeah.
Well, I wasn't allowed
When-
in last year.
When security
so-
comes, I will usually.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, I know where the golf cart entrance is for
Okay.
the people
Well,
on the panel. So,
maybe-
I mean,
maybe
I
how
can
we
show
get
you
out.
that door. Yeah.
Denise, people are watching. The internet is watching. You don't admit that stuff over the internet. Come on.
Keep on forgetting.
mhm.
Right. Well, just to switch gears on another one of the projects you've been working on, the novel Gideon's Sword. You
Mhm.
adapted,
Gideon's Sword, yeah.
adapted this thing twice, and once for Michael Bay as a feature, and then for Ridley Scott as a TV pilot. Was that concurrent, same time?
No, it was completely serendipitous, and I've been waiting to use that word, serendipitous.
Nice.
Rock
Good
on.
usage.
No, that was just a weird. Hollywood is a weird place, and it's a novel by Douglas Child and Preston. I'm getting their names wrong. Two guys who were very successful, kind of airport novelists, and
The Relic. They wrote The Relic. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, they did. They have a number of very successful novel series. This is one of their characters, and Paramount, hired me to adapt it as a feature some years ago. Didn't get made because Michael Bay was just going to make movies about giant robots, and that's what Michael Bay should do. And then, like 10 years later, I got a call from Scott Free, which is Ridley Scott's production company, and they, their CBS had sent them this book called Gideon's Sword, and they said, "Do you think you want to try and make this into a TV series? And do you know anyone who might want to do it?" And they're like, "We'll ask Chap." And they're like, "You want to do it again?" Because they knew I had done it once before. I'm like, "Sure, money's good." So we made it into a TV series. I mean, we wrote a TV pilot. It did not get picked up to a series. And if they ask me to do it a third time, I will do that also.
Do you feel like you're the only, now that you've, adapted that story twice, do you feel like whatever you're asked to do with that story, you're like, no problem, I got it, because I know these characters, I've already done it twice? Or do you feel like it's just like it's not there, it's like it's not going to happen?
The best parts of that book was the skill set of the protagonist. He was what they call the social. He was a really great liar, is what he was. Like, he was a social engineer, and he could talk people into almost anything. And the authors created this idea of a kind of a covert reverse engineering company, or what they called it failure engineering. So they would figure out how bad things could happen, and they would stop them. So if the president was going to be assassinated, or if there was going to be a dam failure in Eastern Europe, but you didn't know, they would calculate what are the 75 ways to assassinate the president of the United States, and they would prevent them from happening. Or, if somewhere in Eastern Europe is a dam that's going to fail, they would figure out what the dam was and what was going to make it fail and prevent it from happening. So it was going to be a globe hopping, like, crisis intervention series. And that's all still totally valid. I just would take someone that would want to do that.
Well, in the process, okay, you developed it as a feature. And first of all, it sounds like something that I know it belongs to the authors of that book, but it reminds me of Michael Crichton very much, and I'm a Michael Crichton fan. And that's not appropriate to the question that I was wanting to ask, just merely anecdotal. Another SAT word for you. But in the case of adapting from a book to a feature and then adapting a book to a TV series, you've already adapted it once. There's got to be a challenge shifting from one, because it is a different, language screenwriting for a feature than writing for a TV script, isn't it?
It is, but it's just a matter of structure. I mean, a movie is one thing, one story, one arc that has to evolve and be resolved by the end, whereas obviously a pilot episode of a television series is one story that must generate as many stories as possible, extending out into the future. So that particular underlying material lent itself very, they have a very kind of pop commercial sense. At least that particular story was kind of designed, I think, to be that kind of thing. So it wasn't particularly challenged. I don't want to say it that way. You had to, anytime you adapt anything, right, it has to serve what it is going to be. So however brilliant a novel may be, you have to fit it into 120 minutes in a 3-act structure, even if you have to cut out the best parts that you love the most. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, I got rights to a book that I'm not going to mention, but
is it the Bible?
No. No.
There's a lot of stories in there, I'm just saying. Some of them
there
not.
are. I'm not going to tell you what I say, not on the podcast, but
Oh boy.
Remember, you're in Texas.
Yeah.
No, she's in Arizona.
I'm in
I'm
Arizona.
in Texas. So
Okay.
she can say it all she wants.
Depends on what part of Arizona, but go ahead.
Good point.
No, it's very I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say anything.
Don't do it.
So anyway, the book it's something that I really enjoyed. I've read it over and over and over. It's not very popular, and I wrote to the publisher. I reached out to the author personally. I was like, hey, I would like to try and adapt this into a series, and then see if anything comes from it. But my problem is that I was like, I could do this. I've been working on this for like 2 years already, but it's hard. It's exactly what you're saying. Like, the parts that I love don't actually feed the story. And it's been a challenge to can I put it in? Well, what would it do? Nothing. So yeah, it's been hard, like going through and marking all those out, because it just,
honestly, people will say that bad novels make the best movies.
Yeah.
Because and here's an example that disproves that, but it's an exception. Like A Perfect Storm, right? The George Clooney movie about the fisherman. That book, written by Sebastian Junger, was a brilliant book that had to do with the lives of fishermen in Gloucester and their domestic relationships and the history of cod migration and the sea and meteorology and all kinds of things that were just amazing and beautiful. And Sebastian Junger is a brilliant writer, and it was a deep, moving experience. And none of those things could be in the movie, right?
Oh,
you're not gonna. I mean, you can, I guess, like in, for Adam McKay in The Big Short, actually, whatever, cut to, was it Angelina Jolie or somebody in a bathtub going, and this is how short selling works, right? But in reality, in most movies, you're not going to have a 3-minute digression about how the migratory patterns of cod built societies on the East Coast and then whale oil or whatever. That's not going to happen.
right.
And so the fact that they were able to take that book and make a still emotionally powerful adventure movie, I'm good for them. Well done. In most cases, like The Godfather is a trashy, pulpy little book that Mario Puzo wrote quickly for money.
Yeah.
Right. And there's nothing in it that has anything to do with the genius opera about the corruption at the heart of the American dream that Francis Coppola turned it into.
Right.
And as you know, he got the job because the other Italian-American director was busy. Right. So, and then it's a crappy book that became, maybe one of, if not the great American movie. So all of which is a long-winded way of saying good luck adapting things.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, conversely, Dune. I mean, you want to talk? I mean, now it's being done a second time and split up into 2 movies.
Yeah.
And having read it, I'm like, wow. I mean, the biggest problem with books like that or the Lord of the Rings is that just the cultural immersion has to be a tone, not a story plot point, because it can't be, right?
Right. And that's what Peter Jackson did so well, right? He built that world. And he also had, it's pretty ballsy. It wasn't like they didn't know it was going to succeed. And then after the first one, they knew it was going to succeed. And they made 9 hours of Hobbit. But
Which should have been 6, but okay.
Yeah, exactly. Or less. But, but what he did was he built the whole world. And I think that's a big exception, because obviously you very rarely will be given the resources and the commitment of outside of maybe some of the big swings now for the streamers, right? Like the pilot to Game of Thrones cost $50 million, and they
Mm.
reshot it because the first one sucked, and they just threw it out and redid it, most of it, and that seemed like it worked out really well, except for the last season, which we won't talk about. But
Right.
same Boardwalk Empire, like when they shot Boardwalk Empire, because they built the world, right? They built 3 blocks of Atlantic City, New Jersey in 1929 on the Brooklyn waterfront. They knew that they were committing to making several seasons of that because they spent $50 million. And that's why those things succeeded. Absent that, it's hard to commit to that to make worlds. It's not cheap.
Yeah, I think one of the hardest things, like even in Lord of the Rings, there's so much like emotional and mental processes that are in the books that how do you write what somebody's thinking? You have write don't tell or show don't tell. And that's insanely challenging. Like, how do you put into a script format what somebody is thinking? Especially when you're adapting from a book, because there's a lot and then I thought blah blah blah. I'm like,
Right.
Well, you can't say that to the person that you're talking to,
And you can't do it as a voiceover like they did in
Right.
Dune, which was one of those things that kind of undercut that film.
Yeah, voice
Yeah.
of God. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it's such an interesting process, but yeah.
But Denise,
cool.
I have to ask: are you adapting, or is this an adaptation you're doing?
It's an adaptation. Yeah.
And that, my friends, is what we call a running gag.
But when she's done, it will have been adapted.
It will have been adapted. Correct, sir. You are the winner.
Thank
There
you.
you go. And my gag will have destroyed itself along the way. Just
Yes.
that's the way that works.
Taking you with it.
Yeah. All right. So, but getting back to the process of story. So, I don't want to make any assumptions because we're learning you and learning your process here a little bit. But whether this goes to whatever you're working on, adaptations, spec, whatever you'd be working on, what is it about a story that makes it great to you? Like, what is that philosophy or, and process is different, but does that inform your process? How does that feed into what you're doing? How do you discern all that?
Everything is character. Character is drama, as like they say in film school. A Western 3-act motion picture is just always the journey of a character or a group of characters. So whatever cool shit happens to them along the way, it's just Aristotelian. It's just a character wants something. If they get it, it's a drama. If they don't get it, it's a tragedy. And if they slip on a banana peel on the way, it's a comedy, right? But it's just always about who is the character and what does he or she want and why can't they have it and what will happen if they get it. What have they done wrong in the past and what do they hope to do in the future? That's all. That's all. And then you structure the whole story to deliver on that journey, that arc.
So do you start with a character and then write your story around it?
Often, I mean, I get ideas in all kinds of places. I get ideas in church. I get ideas listening to music. I get ideas, all over the place. But the ones that stick, they tend to be about characters that resonate with me, dealing with issues that are important to me. And obviously, as a working professional, I'm trying to get a job adapting a board game that I will not mention into a movie. And that's stupid. That's a silly idea. And that's what I did with it. Like, I made it a comedy because it's so inherently silly. But this particular board game has a very passionate, kind of nerdy following. Mm-hmm. And so
many board games are coming to mind right now. And I'm like,
well, and we're not going to make you admit anything.
No, I'm not going to make you
on the job. But as an example, all right, so this board game has a very passionate following. Your grandmother probably plays it. It seems very odd. What kind of movie could that be? Unless you make a movie about a community that accepts everyone. And so it becomes a comedy about a guy who doesn't accept himself or anyone else, learning to accept himself and others by becoming part of this goofy, oddball community built around this game. That's the movie. So
Right.
what it really, and there'll be gags and funny stuff and all that stuff, but it's about the main character, the protagonist, starting out as a big fat jerk and suffering a fall from grace, and then clawing his way back to being a better person with setbacks and twists, because he becomes part of a community of all these other oddballs who are okay with who they are.
And see, everything you've described is just following a character,
Just a character.
and yeah, the character arc, because that's what, as you mentioned in features, you have an arc there. You're following your character is that arc. Your character and their change, their journey into changing is that arc.
Yep.
And what's interesting about that is that everything you described about what the philosophy and the process is, I could only imagine that's one of the first things you would say to your prospective NYU students learning about this craft or filmmaking in general. Because if you start someone down the path of, like, if someone asks you, how do I start writing a screenplay? And then maybe the first thing that we should be telling people is,
Don't do it.
well, that after that, if you're going to do it, then start with a character. Think about who that is and what they're going to do and how they can change. So,
yeah, most people, as you guys know, I'm sure you have people approach you, hey, I have an idea for a movie. And then what they'll tell you is a setting or an incident. There's this bar and there's the girl there and she has one arm and she can do this. It's amazing. Okay, well, that's a scene, or that's a setting, or, the rocket ship powered by human waste. It's amazing. They poop their way into space. Okay, that's disgusting and maybe kind of cool, but that's not a movie. Like,
right.
A movie is a character who wants something.
Right, because otherwise it has no lifeblood, right?
You could blow shit up and slap music on it and probably try and make something out of it, but anything that's worth any decent story is about a man or a woman that wants something. And I don't want to sound like, but it is. Like, the only good book they gave us in film school was, Aristotle's Poetics, and it's about this big, and it's 3,000 years old. And
We read that.
Yeah, it's just, it is what it is. Like, it's, what do you want? What are the obstacles to getting it? Why do you want it? What happens if you get it? What happens if you don't get it? What happens if you get it and it makes you worse and you give it back? Like, that's the story of a character, and that's the hardest part for most screenwriters beginning their journey. I co-taught a class last semester, fairly advanced, college class, and writers, or newer writers, have a problem. Stuff has to happen in a movie, right? You need drama, but that drama always comes from, what does your character want? And they might be very talented, and Tarantino's a great example. He can write a 5-minute scene where people say all kinds of crazy shit about the Silver Surfer, and it's fascinating and interesting. He's not so great on story, unique, and he can get away with it because he's who he is, and he has unique talent. There's no unique place at the right time. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Tell me what that story is.
Exactly. As much as I like it, as much as I'm fascinated by it and want to read the novelization, even I have to admit, this is not something that's actually going somewhere, except to leading back to a point that if you know your history is what keeps you on the edge of your seat. And after that, would you watch it again is the big question. That's a whole other set of, analysis.
Yeah, no, and only Quentin Tarantino gets to do that. Like,
right.
A 3-hour meditation on the lost past of Hollywood with giant movie stars and beautiful character moments about, a failing B-movie actor who's in a, Rawhide spinoff, and his sidekick's stuntman and beautiful, ethereal actress, and just meditate on their lives for 3 hours and drive around, a beautifully reconstructed 68 Hollywood or whatever it is. That's fantastic. It's not.
Yeah,
It's
that's a
not
great
a-
point.
It's not a movie.
It's not, but it's great production design. I got to say, that's
It's very. It's my favorite movie ever made was Jackie Brown. That's my second favorite. I'm not a Tarantino fan, but I enjoyed that movie very much up to the end. It was stupid, but my opinion. Sorry.
No, and I think that's a strong point because I think everybody that I knew when I was going to getting my bachelor's and I majored in film, and everybody was like all gaga about Pulp Fiction, but to me, Tarantino's best movies are ones where it actually had more character going for it. Kill Bill is great, I think. To me, the ones that are the lower commitment and shorter, like Death Proof and From Dusk Till Dawn, I like those a whole lot more because there's people you can follow, and there's a switch midway that's completely like out of left field, and it's got some new ideas to offer, like to a stunt man who kills with a car. I'd never seen anything before like that. But to me, those are stronger films that he's made from a writing perspective because it's still got all the things you like about Tarantino, but it actually has a character or characters you can follow.
He certainly is you know, there's a handful of screenwriters who have created their own genre. And for a period in like the mid to late 90s, Tarantino-esque was a genre, and it was a bunch of scumbag criminals standing around riffing on, you know, doing what he does the best, badly, right? Like talking about comic books or their mom or sandwiches, who makes the best sandwiches, like whatever it was,
right?
You know, riffing on it, and then somebody gets shot in the face, and they're not him, so it wasn't as good. He's a terrible example for screenwriters because, you know, it's like Picasso destroyed figurative painting, so everybody thinks they don't have to learn how to draw, and they forget that Picasso was the greatest figurative painter in Spain when he was 12. Like, he already knew how to do all that, and then he destroyed it. Tarantino is kind of a one-of-a-kind character, whether you like him or not, or think he's has anything to say or not. No one else can do that. Like, you don't get to do that because you're not him. And if you do if you turn in, you know, if you show up at the screenwriting competition with your 3-hour meditation on, you know, 1968 Hollywood with long digressions about, you know, the production history of Rawhide, I don't know. I don't know that you're going to win that contest because you're not Tarantino. You know?
Yeah, I read for.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I read for a couple of festivals, and you can tell if Tarantino is like their inspiration and the way it's formatted and the way it's laid out, and you can usually tell. But,
Shane Black is another guy. When Shane Black, when Shane Black wrote the Lethal Weapon movies, and he wrote Long Kiss Goodnight, and then most recently he did Iron Man 3, and he did you know,
The Nice Guys.
The Nice Guys, which was great.
Yeah,
another guy that's not great on story, but he out of the gate had a completely unique voice and a way of writing, is particularly on the page. Like, if you read, you know, most famously in his description, in his you know, his lines of description in the script, there's a scene that takes place in the bad guy's house, and he lives in this fabulous, you know, mansion, ultra modern mansion in the Hollywood Hills, and Black describes it in the description of the script as, this is the kind of house I'll buy when this movie's a hit.
Yep.
And nobody did that. Like, that was what the fuck, you know?
Right.
But it worked because he was him, and he was in the right place at the right time, and he had a unique voice. And that would be the other thing that I would say to aspiring writers. The first and most important thing is learn structure and learn, even if you want to make experiment, whatever you want to do. As I said, Picasso could draw a human figure better than anyone else in the country of Spain, and then he decided never to do it again by choice. But he could do it if he wanted to. You must learn 3-act structure. You must learn where stuff goes and why it has to go there, and the arc of a character. And then once you can do that, the thing that will stand out most when you're trying to get people to read your stuff is your voice. And when I say voice, I mean in the same way that we're discussing Quentin Tarantino or Shane Black, that if you read a Quentin Tarantino script, it doesn't sound like anybody else. Shane Black, when those scripts came out back in the day, you know, and they're that's the oldie time, so they don't Now they've, like Tarantino, like there've been so many copies and so many people have ripped it off. The Matrix, like that movie was
Oh, yeah.
completely sui generis. Like, there was no other movie like that. And then it got, they were doing beer commercials with bullet time, and so it's been ripped off so much that it's kind of hard to look back and see how completely unique it was. But in terms of being a screenwriter, yeah, the authentic expression of your worldview or the style by which you write, or the combination of the words you choose for your description and the tone of your dialogue and the way you express the world of the movie on the page in a way that no one else can, that's your voice. And most screenplays are not good, and most screenwriters, even professional ones, are not all that good. And they all kind of sound the same unless you're different. And if you're different, people will pay attention, because the good news is people, agents, managers, producers, development executives just read a lot of shitty scripts, and they really want your stuff to be good. Like nobody, people maybe get the idea that they don't, if however you managed to by hook or by crook to get these people to spend, the 20 minutes of their life reading the first 15 pages of your script, they want it to be E.T. They want it to be, Die Hard. They want it to be Brokeback Mountain. They want it to be whatever, like whatever the greatest thing is. They want it to be breathtaking and amazing and make them cry and laugh and be like, this is the greatest effing screenplay ever written. I must talk to this person now. She or he or they are completely unique, and I've never read this before, and this is awesome, because everything else they read is not like that.
Right.
And it's not. No, people want you to be great. Is the good news. Most people are not, because it's really hard to do.
Well, right, and for probably some of those fundamental, elemental reasons, like for instance, I mean, everything we're talking about here, I think dovetails nicely back into the idea of philosophy and process. Because if you're looking at it from the point of view, why do you want to imitate someone else? Because there's really just no benefit to being an imitation, because being distinctive gives you that chance to tell things the way that you really think they should be, even if it doesn't get made. I mean, just to accomplish the just that first draft, yeah, it may suck, but at least it's your thoughts, your process, and you're not trying to be like anyone else.
Yeah, I mean, as I'm sure most of your listeners know, they develop many fewer screenplays than they used to, but still, and they apply metrics to it because they're all owned by corporations, and they're very specific about what they develop and what they spend on it. But it's still 10 to 1 at a studio. Like they used to have 250 projects. Now maybe they have 50 projects in development, which they're going to try and make 10 movies out of. And most of those are probably pre-existing IP. So most things you write, even professionally, that people give you money for, are not going to be made. But if it's really unique and good, someone else will hire you to do something else.
Right.
Do you feel like there's a shift now because of all of the streaming services, that there's more opportunity?
In terms of the content? Opportunity? For beginning screenwriters? No. Those streaming services are all looking for packages. They're looking for screenplays that are packaged. They don't really do development. Like they're not really in the business. Netflix doesn't, like a traditional studio where there were development executives who will sit with a writer and a producer and be like, this is the tone we want it to have. And we really think the protagonist should be more like this. And what if we did that? And what was really great last week? This was a success. Let's do that. They don't do that. Like they're not equipped for that. They're technology companies. And they're also in an enormous volume business, right?
Right.
Netflix is going to make 50 movies.
Right.
They don't have time. They don't have the interest. They don't have the skill set. And they don't have the time to develop a screenplay for years, which is what it takes.
Right.
They want someone to come in the door with a screenplay, an actor, and a director, and they'll decide how much they want to spend on it. So in terms of writing movies for big studios or streamers, no. But in terms of doing all those other things that we discussed earlier, creating your own podcast, creating your own novels, creating your short stories, creating your graphic novels, motion comics, all those things, yeah, absolutely, that's wide open. And particularly management companies, but even studios have people out looking at all of those outlets trying to find, famously, like, so Diablo Cody, and that's a few years ago, but she's still a successful lady writer, and she has an Oscar, and they pay her lots of money, and she was a stripper, famously, in the middle of the country, and I think it was a manager. She had a blog, right? Like, she had a funny, like, in her style, she's a very acerbic, humorous, kind of take no shit, call a spade a fucking shovel type writing style. And she had a blog, like a blog or like a blog. And she wrote about being a stripper in some shitty Midwest town, and about the fat guys and about the fat strippers and the way that she writes. And she clearly like had a unique voice and a view of the world which she could express. And that's a famous story. And now she's an Academy Award winner, who lives in a
I didn't know that part of it.
No, that's 100% true.
Crazy.
Yeah, she was a stripper. She was an exotic. She was a dancer who took her clothes off, but she was a smart woman who had something to say about it. And they found her on the internet, and they said, and then she wrote Juno,
Right.
Yeah.
which is one of those, great movies where the teens all talk like adults think teens talk.
Yeah.
Right.
Or the teens wish they talk, but they don't really, because real teens are like, I don't know, man. But in Juno, they were incredibly articulate.
Yes.
And
They had
kind of
Dawson's Creek syndrome.
Yeah, but it was great, and it worked really well, and it was when you read Juno, when you read Diablo Cody, nothing like it. Like, there were no other writers out there with that particularly not just feminine point of view, but not just feminist point of view, but like Midwestern stripper with a chip on her shoulder and the talent to express it point of view. And she had that lane all to herself, and she ran with it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess I shan't be sending my stuff to Netflix anymore. Just joking. I've never.
No, I mean, at that
They're
point,
making, and the other thing is they're just making the good. Like, the good news is, as you probably are aware, the studios all got out of the business of making mid-priced movies, right? So what used to be, the mid-priced kind of prestige crime picture, the drama about the ballsy lady lawyer who fought the oil company,
Right.
The movie star drama about the two movie stars getting divorced, like all those kind of mid-priced dramas all went away because they were too expensive to market, and they had to be done. There's the concept, right? If it's giant robots from outer space and it costs $300 million, it was decided that was actually a safer investment of the stockholders' money than LA Confidential, which is genius and made $65 million, right? Changing Lanes made $65 million. Heat made $65 million. For whatever reason, that seemed to be the ceiling if everything went right. But the good news is, like, the streamers, all of them, because they need so much volume, and because people like action movies. Like, there was a whole period, obviously, in the 80s and 90s going into the early 2000s when there were all those, pick their names, all those shit blows up movies, One Bad Cop,
Die Hard,
whatever it is, like, the mercenaries and the bad cop, but he's going to save the day and his estranged wife, and he drinks whiskey out of his shoe, whatever it is. People like those movies. Like, they're enjoyable.
Yeah.
And they stopped making them because DVD money ran out. But what are they putting on Netflix and Amazon and Hulu? Action movies, detective movies. They've been trying for years to find some of those. Amazon has always threatened to find some of those, like, steamy kind of soft core parents stay home on Saturday night, Basic Instinct type erotic thrillers, right?
Yeah.
Which they used to make. Ashley Judd in danger movies, right? So because people like those movies and they're not around, and so Amazon is not in the business anymore of making beautiful little shows about transgender people.
Yeah, and that shift in society, like that shift in what people are seeing, is why I stopped writing my historical dramas, is because people were telling me, like, no one's ever, this is like a 1 in a trillion. Because
it depends. I don't know. It's not. It may make it more challenging for yourself. Anytime you have to spend more money on hoop skirts and horses, you make it more challenging. Bridgerton was a giant hit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I didn't write Bridgerton.
No, but yeah, but that's my point. My point being, like, the way they did that, and not just the colorblind casting, but like they took, a 19th century drawing room. They basically turned into Gossip Girl with sex, right? But
Right.
everyone had, but in early 19th century England, and that people liked it, right? They liked the pretty girl, and they liked that handsome black guy, and
Yeah.
they thought, and who's the Gossip Girl? Who's writing the,
Yeah.
So it's just finding a way to do it that is different. You stack the odds against you. You make it more challenging yourself. You make the path narrower.
Right.
That's
At
why I
that
like
point-
the challenge.
Well, and it's a passion project because, I mean, conversely with that, the stuff that I like to write is more of the, big canvas kind of would-be blockbuster kind of stuff. And I know it's not going to get necessarily made, but that doesn't mean I can't translate it over somewhere else, like a novel or a comic, if it belongs in those environments, or if I can change that to those environments, then maybe that's how I get it out to the world. Does it have to be a film is a very good question, I think, that each of us have to ask ourselves from the beginning. What is a good medium for this to go down? And for not just for the reasons of passion or of business and strategy, but does it always make sense that way too? Is it malleable for other ideas or for other avenues, mediums? And that's,
Yes.
I think, a solid question.
Is that a question, or is that?
Well, that's just my anecdote on it, because you would have to. I
Yeah,
mean,
you're
for
right.
Haunted City, I mean, at some point you probably had to make that decision. It's like not because of you had to, but or maybe that's a good question. What was it that made you want to take it into a comic book format?
Because we wanted to create an underlying IP that we would own, rather than just writing a. When you do what's in the United States under copyright law, when you do what's called a work for hire, when you pitch something or sell something to a studio, they own it.
Yeah.
They could take your title and turn it into a porno, or they can just show 2 hours of black screen. They can do anything they want. They own it. Europe's a little different. So, but if you are adapting a novel or a comic book or a podcast, then it's a different legal framework, and you can negotiate for different things. And so, and also because we wanted to create a visual medium that would show people what the world looked like for us. So for both those reasons.
Right. So
We-
it
Like-
was.
Go ahead, Chris.
Go ahead.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead, Denise.
I got to jump out of here fairly quick.
Okay.
If-
Oh, I understand. We understand.
No problem. Just quick roundup question.
Yep.
How many projects do you work on at the same time?
So most of the things that you do, most of the jobs that you pursue, you will not get. Most of the jobs that you do get will not get made. So as a writer, as a professional writer, you always just have multiple things going on, because you have to have 10 irons in the fire, because you know that 8 of them or 7 of them or 9 of them, hopefully not 10 of them, will not pan out. So right now I have 2 TV projects in active development with people, working with teams of producers. I have a feature job that I'm pursuing. I have a feature spec that I've written that I have to do a quick polish on, that will go out to directors. And I have an outline that I'm going to send to my managers to potentially send out to people as another. So probably 3 or 4 feature projects from I have a script done that I'm going to send out to I have an idea I'm going to tell somebody, like in that spectrum, and 2 TV things that are I'm actively developing.
That's crazy.
And yeah. Well, yeah, no, the crazy part is no one's giving me money for any of those things yet.
Oh,
So,
well,
But
Right.
that's the
one
way-
day it's coming. You have such good ideas. I am putting up your
Yes, please.
your-
Everyone follow me on
your
Twitter. I'm big
Twitter
on Twitter.
handle because now you have to do that whole social media thing.
Yep.
Do you know Chap Taylor 1? I was just curious when I saw it.
I assume that he's a very nice minister somewhere, and he's probably chaplain.
Well,
Uh,
and
God bless him.
there you go. And see, the best reason to follow screenwriters on Twitter, and this is not an always true adage, but I've found that a writer loves Twitter because it gives them a chance to write within a constrictive environment. Honestly, I think it's a great tool for comedians, because if you wanted to write one-liners, you know,
if I'll say two quick things. Number one, yes, if you're in, I'm not a comedy guy. My ex-wife used to say, "You're not funny. Don't write comedy."
there you
That's why
go.
I just say a lot of things, but that's another conversation. If you are a funny man or woman and you want to be in comedy, yeah, get on social media and be funny. Do not be mean funny, because that shit will come back to get you, and the standards change quickly. But do be funny. That's on social media. That's absolutely another example of an avenue. And I would advocate for all of your listeners who want to be in the entertainment business, build a social media platform, build a social media brand. Don't be a dick. Don't dunk on people. Obviously, don't say racist, homophobic, misogynist, political, religious stuff. This is going to be your business platform. And what I have found, and I've only been on Twitter for about 9 months, there is an enormously supportive, it goes against everything social media stands for, but there is an enormously supportive group of people out there, mostly beginning writers or beginning their career, who want to support one another, right? Like that's how we connected on Twitter.
Yeah.
So, and there's lots of professional, like lots of bigger men and women than I am, professionally speaking, out there. You know, Michael Green, who's about as big as they come right now. My friend Mark Guggenheim, who wrote Green Arrow and Green Lantern. Like all those guys are on social media, and as long as you're respectful, they're pretty good men and women, and they're out there giving out free advice and boosting people because they're good people. So do that, like, and carefully curate what you say and who you say it to, but be the positive man or woman that gets their work out and supports other people, and because that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to get in front of other people and share information.
And that's
that sums it up. That's perfect for us,
that's
because that's what we do.
Yeah, and the other, and help each other. Like, it's not a competition.
Right.
It's really not. Like, it isn't a zero-sum game. None of us are that important to fill all this. You're just not. So read other people's stuff and give them constructive criticism and be honest with them in a respectful way. Applaud when people win a contest or get a quarterfinal or whatever it is. Like, it's really, nobody should do it unless they have to, right? If you're going to try and be a screenwriter because you think you're going to be rich and famous, you're going to be disappointed, and it'll be very frustrating for you, because it's really frustrating for the men and women who do it professionally, and they get setbacks all the time. And it's a very hard thing to do. It's hard to do professionally. It's hard to do creatively. You know, there's a lot of crappy movies and television, and people who don't know then take away the message that it must be very easy to do. And the reality is the opposite, is that really highly paid, really smart men and women do nothing else all day long and usually fail, because it's hard to tell a good story, and there's all kinds of reasons for that. Do it for love. And that sounds like Happy Days. It's the truth. Like, you go into it with a 7-step plan to be a millionaire. God bless you. I hope that works out for you. Probably it will not. If you're going for validation so other people tell you you're great, maybe. Do it because you love to tell stories and you want to be better at it and you want to be part of a community, and because you have to. Because I have to tell stories. And then the medium that takes is up to you, as we discussed. Does it have to be screenplays? Do you want to like write a little play and put it on at the local theater? Do you want to shoot a little short, for YouTube? Do you want to write that novel and self-publish it and get your friends to do the recommendations and game the algorithm so it gets in front of people? There are guys who make $1 million a year writing books. They exclusively publish themselves on Amazon. They figured out how to do it. And I'm not saying that God bless you can make $1 million a year, but I'm saying if you really have to tell stories, then you're going to figure out a way to do it. And you can keep trying to do it and get better at it. Don't do it for any other reason. Do it because you have to, or you won't. You just won't. It won't last.
Total mistakes. Yep. Got it.
I mean, I don't even think we need a departing words of wisdom, which we always close with, because that was so profound right there. Do it for the love. I mean, how much better does it get than that? Having said that, Denise, you have some departing words of wisdom that I thought were just, to me, it's great because we haven't done one yet that is more from the material rather than from somebody about the craft of writing the material.
Yeah, this is in honor of Mick G because it's one of my. It is probably my right under X-Files for me. Parting words of wisdom are from Sully, who is Sam Winchester's imaginary friend in Supernatural, and he said, "One thing I've learned is that heroes aren't perfect." And that's all I got about that one. It spoke to me in that, we always talk about flaws. There are no perfect people because perfect people are boring. But if they aren't perfect and they have that challenge to overcome, then they can get better.
People think that saints are just super holy people that wander around doing super holy stuff when they're not. They're just average people who on any given day got themselves up and did something extraordinary to make the world a better place. Yeah, that's a hero.
Yeah, and amen to that. But, don't place people on pedestals when you don't need to. Like, how they say don't meet your heroes? I'm not suggesting don't have them or don't have people that you want to aspire to be by, but it's real easy to demonize or sanctify anybody. And the better thing to do is just to truly respect them as a human being.
Mm-hmm. Good advice for everyone.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much
my pleasure, guys.
I know you went over your time, but thank you so much for spending time with us. And please do keep us posted on any project that is going forward. Or if you want us to post anything, we're happy to do so.
Please do.
Yeah. And we're going to post some links in our social media about where to find the comic book and, your Twitter handle and all that good stuff. So we'll let everyone know.
Thank you very much. And you'll send me a link that I can put up on my Twitter, right? So everyone can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Please, absolutely.
Yes. The more the merrier.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
No problem.
Bye.
All right. And then next week, next episode, stay tuned to our Facebook because we have some amazing guests coming up.
Hey,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Almost as amazing.
Almost as amazing. I mean, they're never going to top you.
Let me get out of the studio before you're like, and next week we have a real. Is he gone? Next
Barry Manilow's on next week.
Barry Manilow is going to be on. He's going to sing and dance. You will not even remember that other guy's name because he's going to do. He's doing all the hits. He's got the sparkly suit.
Yeah.
Just let me leave before you do that.
Well, and
let me have my drink.
Well, it's not like we're going to go live and go, next week we got a real shit bag for you. And just, that would really be good career suicide, wouldn't it?
I just hope he shows up sober. I just hope he's not high again on the show. That's all. Oh, I've said too much.
Oh, look, well, I thought I did.
I know. All right, guys. I'll see you. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us.
All right. That was awesome. I learned a lot.
Oh, yeah. And that's exactly what we're all about here. And honestly, I hope everybody's getting a lot out of what we're bringing to them. I mean, I felt like we just attended his NYU course right there. So everybody, if you're in New York and you want to learn film, definitely check out Chap Taylor.
Yeah.
See if you can get in on one of his classes. I don't know what the program's like. I assume it's closed and stuff like that, where you
I'm sure NYU is.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say exclusive, but.
Well, I mean, everything's exclusive till you get in. So.
Just like this podcast.
Well, yeah, I don't think we're that exclusive, but everybody, out there,
everybody's welcome.
Right. We come on in. It's, we don't discriminate up in this joint. Just saying. And to all of our listeners out there, please be safe. Please keep writing and keep dreaming.
Absolutely.